what is the leading cause of heart disease? Walk around and ask all these doctors, at what point did you learn about benefits of plant-based diet? And they would say like, yeah, I was in my 40s and 50s, and that's too late. Why aren't we teaching this in medical schools? Where does saturated fat come from? Meat, eggs, dairy. There is no cancer institute that tells you that you should be eating more meat. It is a fact that when you cook meat in high temperatures, you're producing more carcinogens. How can I reduce the most amount of suffering and torture from day one until they're killed? Hell on earth.
A little interruption before we get into today's episode. So I run these shows ad-free. We will never take on sponsors because everything is self-funded through our Fit Vegan coaching program. So if you enjoy this show, the best way to support is obviously to subscribe to the channel. But also, if you know anyone over the age of 50 that is looking to improve their body composition, combat sarcopenia, combat osteoporosis, and simply want to get healthier on a whole food plant-based lifestyle, simply send them our way over at fitvegancoaching.com. We're the best in the world in helping people over 50 transform, with over 1,100 transformations from 20 different countries. In addition to that, a percentage of our profit monthly goes towards supporting cancer patients with their treatments, bills, and whatever they may need to support themselves and their family. So you're also supporting additional people outside of the work that we do in the program. That's all I have for you today. Enjoy the episode. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Maxime Sigouin Podcast. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Faraz Harsini. Dr. Harsini is a biomedical scientist, educator, and passionate advocate for the power of plant-based nutrition. His research has spanned cellular biology, chronic disease prevention, and the impact of diet on long-term health. Beyond the lab, he has dedicated his career to bridging the gap between science and everyday life, making complex health concepts easy to understand and apply. So in today's episode, we'll explore the science on why a whole food plant-based lifestyle can be so powerful, not just for preventing disease, but for extending health span. We'll also be talking about his amazing work that he's been doing in the vegan advocacy space. Had a hard time with that one. So Dr. Faraz, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm honored to. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, we've met before, but we reconnected at the PCRM conference a few weeks ago in Washington. And I was like, man, we need to have you on the podcast because you've been doing incredible work. So I'm excited for you to be able to come and provide some value for our listeners.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad we met in person at the conference, PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. So great conference that brings a lot of passionate advocates together.
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime I interview someone that has a deep passion for veganism or for the medical space and wanting to serve people, usually they have a pretty incredible background story, because a lot of people don't spend a lot of their life trying to serve others. And so do you mind kind of sharing what got you to this place to make you do this work?
Absolutely. So I think you're right. It's generally a deep passion that, for me at least, it's rooted in different things. Obviously, before going vegan, I really was concerned about the environment. I was trying to use my bachelor in chemical engineering for that route. Then I started using my music to help cancer patients. So I went to hospitals, volunteered, played music, accordion. So I didn't take my piano there, just accordion.
Nice.
Inspired by Patch Adams. He, wore the red nose, sort of tried to make kids happy in hospitals. So did that, and then seeing kids suffering, I decided to do something more meaningful. So that's why I decided to do cancer research. I came to the US. I'm originally from Iran, but I came to the US, got a position in one of the best cancer institutes in Texas. So I studied there. I think the underlying question at any given point in my life was, what is the most impactful thing that I can do with my life? What is the best way to help the world? And, I think I'm a sensitive guy. So I always saw like different things, different shit that's going on in the world. And I was like, oh my God, like, how are you going to even fix it? So there's the environmental issues, then there is the, chronic diseases and children suffering and world hunger. And back in Iran, we had like lots of Afghan immigrants. They didn't have human rights. So I got into like human rights activism back then. It was just so many things. About the same time when I started my cancer research, another thing happened. I'm an animal lover. So I was actually rescuing some animals. And one of my friends said, Faraz, you don't make any sense. You're trying to rescue animals, but like you eat them. And that really hit a nerve. Uh, I hated my friend for
I
3 months,
bet.
and then I was like, God damn it, she has a point. So I started looking into it. I was a huge meat eater. I love meat. And I think that really just the most shameful time in my life is when I started learning about what happens to animals and then still telling myself, sorry, it's just like 1 second of you dying. I just love meat so much. And I can't really believe I ever said that. But I know that that's how a lot of people think. So after that, really my journey started learning about the animal cruelty behind meat, eggs, dairy. Obviously, I became vegetarian because I had no idea about eggs and dairy industries and how all those animals are killed and how male chickens are killed in egg industry, male calves are killed in dairy. Like you don't even egg industry. I don't know what I said. It's just like you don't even think about it. You don't learn about it, and so that was a huge change in my life when I finally became vegan about 14 years ago. Then I continued my education. I was already committed to my doctoral research on other diseases. After my doctorate, I worked in biopharma on zoonotic diseases and other inflammatory diseases. But at some point I was just so tired. I was like, I really wanted to just address the root cause of all these problems I ever cared about, which is the food system, the food that we are eating. That is a major cause of environmental issues. It's a major cause of chronic diseases. And yes, not all cancers are caused by diet, but it's like about half of them you can prevent with lifestyle choices. And then you look at like heart disease, number one cause of death in our species. Like I can't compute like how is it that the number one cause of suffering and death in our species is like we choose to die from it almost. And nobody knows. Like I can't really judge the consumers when they don't know, when the food system is broken. And then you look at top threats to human lives that people don't even talk about. You have zoonotic diseases, you have antibiotic resistance, again, come from animal farming, global malnutrition, food injustice, literally everything that I ever cared about. But, I don't know, have you seen these bar graphs when you have a bunch of like bars and then you suddenly have something that is so big that when you zoom out, everything else just disappears in scale. And
Yes.
that giant bar for me was just animal suffering, because when I think about, again, what is the most important thing that I can do with my life? How can I reduce the most amount of suffering in the world? And when you look at where does the most amount of suffering come from? Well, we kill 3 or 4 trillion animals every single year. And billions of these animals are raised in captivity, mutilated, and literally it's just like hell on earth, like suffering and torture from day one until they're killed. And that system also is linked to top causes of death and suffering to humans. And so the question is, if you want to choose one thing to fight for, what would be the most effective way to spend it? And that comes to the food system, veganism, animal rights, whatever you call it. I think it's all interconnected. But to me, yes, I became vegan, and I do think that veganism is merely just about doing the right thing for animals, not viewing them as commodities and slaves and resources. But I think that the plant-based diet and nutrition is one of the most, if not the most powerful tool that we have to help humans, to help the environment and all other things that I just talked about. And so that's really just my life's mission, because I think it's the only way to address a lot of things that we all care about, but at the root.
I can tell that you have a big heart and a passion for this space. I'm curious. There's a few things you mentioned. One, it seems like you've always had a desire to want to serve and to want to help the world and to want to do, I would say make worth of your life, because I'm the same way. It's like I want to be I want to be useful. I want to be of purpose. I'm curious, you brought up Patch Adams. Was that like a pivotal moment that kind of made you realize like maybe I should go into this field because I would get to help people in a more direct way?
Yeah, I think ever since I was in college, college is probably the first time in your life when you start learning that the world is a shitty place. Before that, before that, you're so young to understand what's going on. You're just trying to, the next step for you is to get into college, at least for me. I was really trying to get into a very good college. So before I was 18, I was just laser focused, studying 14 hours a day to get into a good college. But after that, when I started learning, like, what are the things? Before that, the question was, what do I like to do? And it was chemistry and engineering. So that's why I did chemical engineering. But soon after, I realized that I'm not actually satisfied. And then what is that source of satisfaction? And then I thought that it's a higher purpose in life, right? So doing something that you're passionate about, when you make an impact in somebody's life, whether it's a kid, whether it's, I was helping an Afghan kid who was selling stuff on the street and, just helping him. That was very satisfactory. Going to hospitals, making kids happy, that was satisfactory. And I think that I'm not the only one who is this way, because that when you pursue other things, like, jobs that pay really well, which I had when I was in pharma, you still feel like there is a missing part. At some point, you buy a house, you buy a car, and you're like, all right, what's next? And it feels like we are all like channeled into this thing that you get a college degree, you find a partner, you get married, you buy a house, you have babies, and now you have to take care of the babies, and then you're old and you see your grandchildren and you die. But I think that when I look at the vast majority of people, they don't find that sort of satisfaction in their lives. They're still miserable. And I thought that I was always miserable when I was doing things, knowing that my heart was somewhere else. And yes, I think that pursuing that higher purpose in life, which, generally serving others, just knowing that your life means something, is one of the strongest things that gives someone a mission, something to fight for, something to die for, And the truth is, 2-3 generations after us, nobody is going to remember anything that we've done. Like, we are going to, who knows anything about their great grandfather, right? We don't know anything about it. Maybe in this age with more pictures and videos, but nobody is going to care about us. But what really is going to last, the real legacy, is the real impact that we make today, even if the victims we are helping don't know about us. But that's really just the true, I think, mission for me. And what it really comes down to is like, all right, I can do cancer research to make an impact. I can work on heart disease. I can work on this and that. What is that one thing that is the most neglected one, and it impacts the most number of individuals? And to me, that becomes about diet change, veganism, food system transformation, all that.
Yeah, there's that ripple effect that comes, like you mentioned, 2-3 generations from now, I probably won't remember our names, but again, with the age of social media, we don't know how far the impact we're having will be able to have, because things have never been so documented before. But there will be a ripple effect of people that have read or followed. And I'm sure in 2-3 generations from now, they'll be like, oh, your great grandfather was this big influencer on Instagram, which probably won't exist in 2-3 generations, right? It's going to be an interesting time. So falling into veganism, it was more about animal cruelty, environment, and obviously kind of health, and all the other components kind of came into to the picture as you progress from what it seems. So what are things that you're currently doing to, fulfill that service that you want to have?
So yeah, 3-4 years ago, I quit my job in biopharma, which is pretty risky for me because I don't have a family here in the US. I'm not a citizen just yet. I can't go back to my home country. So it was basically like burning bridges behind my back, and it was a risky move. I'm the first generation immigrant, first generation college student, and all that. Like, finally, I'm the only one apparently in our extended family who actually made it somewhere. And just quitting that like stable job and trying to move to nonprofit world was a risky move, but I'm so glad that I did it. I joined the largest nonprofit that works on food system transformation as a senior scientist. It's called Good Food Institute. So my job is to explore different ways to make alternative proteins available. So that's like plant-based foods, cultivated meat, or precision fermentation proteins that are slaughter-free, right? So they're better for people, better for the environment, all that. So I try to use my scientific background in actually applying it to the food system. But at the same time, my passion was really education, because I was so devastated knowing that I didn't learn about this in college. Most vegans become vegan by accident. Most doctors don't, like at PCRM, Physicians Committees Conference, like walk around and ask all these doctors, at what point did you learn about benefits of plant-based diet? And they would say like, yeah, I was in my 40s and 50s and after the second residency. And so like, that's too late. Why aren't we teaching this in medical schools? There are so many lawyers, I believe, that they go to law school. There is a part of them that cares about injustice, but they don't ever come across the biggest form of injustice of all time, which is animal oppression. They don't even know about it. It's not even on the radar. People go to climate school, and in climate school, they're not talking about one of the largest sources of greenhouse gases and methane. And, they don't talk about food. People talk about social causes all the time while they're a part of like this other issue. So it's crazy that people go to colleges and universities and medical school and law school and never have to question these sort of things and never exposed to it, right? So that's why I'm so passionate about really focusing on the next generation of doctors and lawyers and policymakers and voters and parents. And I think that universities is they're a great place to do advocacy, because you have 50, 60,000 students generally in like 2 blocks. And then you can effectively throughout 4 years, educate them on all these things, on environment, on public health, on animals. But yeah, that's why I'm focusing on that.
Do you find that because I did a few podcasts with Dr. Clapper, and I know he goes around and speaks to medical students as well. Have you found first of all, have you partnered, ever done something with Dr. Clapper? And second, have you found any resistance from some of the university programs for medical students to you kind of coming and sharing that information?
Yeah, I love Dr. Clapper. We actually work with him. And we already have booked a few talks at UT Austin and a few others with him at Brown. We've had him at Brown University multiple times. The goal, the way that with my nonprofit Allied Scholars for Animal Protection, the way we are trying to approach this is it's not going to be just one talk and goodbye. It's you come to this talk and then you're exposed again, and then next semester. And when you walk around campus, you're still exposed to it because students are doing things on campus. There is an active group of students that they do things all the time. So it's not just one talk. But yes, we work with Dr. Clapper and PCRM. We bring their physicians to medical schools. And every time we have them in medical school, we also take them to undergraduate campus. I don't want to just teach medical students, but I also want to teach future medical students. I want someone to go to medical school because now they're so frustrated with the food system, with the medical system, that they're like, I'm going to become the next Michael Clapper and Neil Barnard. That's really just the motivation that I want in the students. So yes, we do work with them in terms of resistance. Anything you do, you get resistance, like no doubt.
Yeah.
The question is like, first, are you going to give up? And second, what does that resistance really mean? You think about it, like, I can't even begin to grasp how much hate Ingrid Newkirk, president of PETA, gets. Probably death threats or whatever. But there is not a single week that goes without me coming across someone who says, yeah, I watched a video from PETA and that's why I'm vegan. I personally have done so many different ways of advocacy, and no matter what I did, somebody complained. So I can't really sit down. The only way that nobody complains is like if you just don't do anything. But the significant majority of people, based on the surveys and data that we collected, they overwhelmingly are open to the message. For instance, I had one of the physicians from PCRM, to give a lecture at University of Wisconsin, and yeah, overwhelmingly positive. Most people said that they're going to reduce their meat, eggs, and dairy consumption. Most people said that their knowledge after the talk about benefits of plant-based diet increased. They're more likely to actually recommend it to their patients and to friends and family. And then, yeah, we had one person who said, lions eat meat too. What's wrong with that? So, okay. We had physicians in Texas A&M's medical school. Texas A&M is the second largest university in the US, where we are very active in the middle of Texas. We had lectures for medical students. For the first time, these students were learning about benefits of plant-based diet. And yeah, so I had a room of 70 students. One of them was a carnivore. Unfortunately, was brainwashed by like this carnivore stuff. But yeah, 1 out of 70, I call it success, right? So
yeah. So I'm curious, when you're speaking to medical students and you're trying to, kind of illustrate to them that this is a better way to eat and to live, what are some of the points that you share with them to kind of convince them to be like, hey, actually look at the data here? So what are the things that you emphasize on when you're talking to them?
It really depends. Depending on, a lot of times we partner with different physicians and they generally approach it from their own expertise. So I had GI doctors. They talked about like gut microbiome on plant-based diet. We had Dr. Kim Williams, who's the former president of American College of Cardiology. So he just talks about heart disease. Dr. Clapper's lecture is more, about chronic diseases as a whole. I might personally focus on zoonotic diseases, antibiotic resistance, and general chronic diseases. So it really depends on who's talking and based on their, expertise. And the good thing is it's such a wonderful gift, plant-based diet, that it really, like, no matter what area of medicine you're into, oncology, GI, cardiology, you have a way of talking about it.
And in your field of studies, you talk about oncology, you talk about biotic resistance, antibiotic resistance. What are things that you'd like to pass off? If you were to be in front of a ton of medical students, which is going to be tens of thousands of people listening to this episode, imagine that they're the students right now. What are things that you would share with them?
I generally just, ask people. What I like to do is, like, how many of you know someone who suffered from heart disease? How many of you know someone? And we all know, like, my dad had heart surgery like 2 weeks ago, right? Like, everybody knows somebody suffering from heart disease, cancer, diabetes. Then you start to ask, what is the leading cause of heart disease? It's not a correlation. This is a causation. That's how strong of evidence we have. Literally every cardiologist would tell you have to control your lipids. You have to reduce your bad or LDL cholesterol, except that they might just not tell you how. Medication, one way to go about it, and for some people it's absolutely necessary. But also, what is really just the root cause of it? In 25% of people, the cholesterol in diet, based on their genetics, it impacts their plasma cholesterol. So that's one thing. Not in everyone, 25% of people, but the bigger factor is actually saturated fat. Saturated fat in your body turns to cholesterol. This is also, fact. This is not like for debate. Everybody understands that saturated fat in your body turns to bad cholesterol. And where does saturated fat come from? Meat, eggs, dairy. Another thing I'd like to emphasize is, I generally ask people, like, when you hear meat, what do you think about? They say, good source of protein, good, tasty, whatever. I ask them, like, when you hear smoking, what do you think about? They immediately say cancer, right? But it didn't used to be this way. It's all marketing. So smoking used to be cool, right? Now meat is marketed to people as a good source of nutrition, good source of protein. It is a good source of protein, but it's not a good food. It's not a good source to get your protein from, because it comes with all the saturated fat and carcinogens. And so what I like to show people is, World Health Organization. It's not a vegan organization. Literally, I looked at 20 top cancer institutes in the world. There is no cancer institute that tells you that you should be eating more meat. They all say cut down on meat. There is a limit to it. And again, I show them this is not a vegan organization. Processed meat, group 1 carcinogen. Red meat as a whole, group 2. And when you look at what causes the carcinogenicity of meat, then you realize that it is also found in other types of meat, although it might be less, but it is there. So things that have been hypothesized and shown to cause cancer in meat, heme iron is one. The other one is actually cooking meat in high temperature. Again, that's a fact. It is a fact that when you cook meat in high temperatures, you're producing more carcinogens on top of carcinogens that are naturally found in meat. I said heme iron. Heme iron is also found in white meat, just in lesser amounts. But when you cook meat, which is basically how nobody eats raw meat, right? So if you're eating,
there's a few weirdos online, but
huh?
I said there's a few weirdos online that do eat
there
raw
are, of course,
meat.
crazy people, and maybe like sushi, raw meat or whatever, but not the vast majority of people, right? We like our burgers and steaks and bacon and chicken nuggets. The least processed form of meat if we eat is probably like steak, right? So what when you barbecue or when you cook meat in high temperature, you're producing even more carcinogens. I really want students to understand that it's only a marketing that when we think about like meat as a good source of protein, we look at dairy as a good source of calcium. It has calcium. I try to teach people to think of food as a package. We can't really just pick a nutrition or nutrient in a food and just say, let's look at this alone. We have to look at that whole package. Like Coke is a good source of probably potassium, but it's not the best way of getting your potassium. Dairy has calcium. It's not the best way to get your calcium, because if you get it from dairy, you're getting antibiotics, you're getting estrogens. And side note, how funny it is when people are worried about, phytoestrogens in soy, but they literally consume dairy that has mammalian estrogen. And it has lactose, which most of us are lactose intolerant. And it has all the saturated fat. Like cheese is basically concentrated saturated fat, right? So you're getting all this stuff to get some calcium or vitamin D that might be added to milk. Why not just getting it from a source where you don't do that and you leave animals alone, you don't cause, pandemics and zoonotic diseases, and all that. I want to add something that sometimes frustrates me is that when doctors only look at what's best for that patient alone, because I think we need to look at the global impact of what we are recommending, especially if we are a healthcare professional. So my responsibility is not just to a patient, my responsibility is to public health. So my dietary recommendations should be aligned with public health improvement. So I don't think that having one egg per week or just a little meat per week is going to significantly increase your risk of cancer or heart disease. But if everyone in the US had just a little egg, that means that we are going to have these massive chicken farms, and then we're going to have bird flu, and then bird flu jumps to cows that we also have because people want their cheese. And now you have these pandemics that go around. They kill animals, they kill farmers, and then eventually they come to humans. Like every zoonotic disease you think about that killed millions of people, obviously from the name, came from animals. People don't know that. HIV, SARS, MERS, swine flu, all bird flus that, COVID-19, they all came because we ate animals. So our dietary recommendations should really be aligned with global health, not just what's good for that one particular patient. And as a food system scientist, I also add to that that every time we have animal products, we're contributing to global malnutrition. So if I have meat today, it just means that I'm contributing to a global issue that makes someone else not have enough food. And the reason for that is animal farming is very inefficient in terms of energy conversion. And so most of the plants, as you probably know, as the audience probably knows, most of the plants that we are growing, corn and soy, we are feeding them to animals. About 80% of agricultural land on Earth is dedicated to raising animals or growing food for those animals. And if people actually ate the plants, we would have way more than enough food to feed everyone. But unfortunately, most of it is just wasted. And by the way, 80% of agricultural land to produce 20% of basically calories in the world. So it's extremely inefficient. And I think that healthcare professionals should be educated on that. So
yeah,
stop there.
hey,
Sorry, that was a lot.
No, it's perfect. It's a lot of great information. As you were sharing that, like I always think of, and I have conversations with a lot of people, a lot of my friends with this, like how do we get people to consume less meat, right? And sometimes we come down to a conversation of, especially in North America, like in Canada and US, there is a status associated to eating meat, right? Like you go to a nice steakhouse, you go to a nice restaurant, it's Wagyu steak or certain type. I don't know. I've been vegan for over 10 years. I don't know all the fancy stuff that they eat, but a lot of it is like meat oriented. And I want to try to find a way to make it the opposite. Like, can eating plant-based be a status? But the thing is, eating plant-based is cheap. So we'd have to make it expensive to make it luxurious to certain restaurants. But no, it is there definitely needs to be a shift in society in how people are perceiving eating meat and kind of what it means. And like you mentioned, I think there's a personal preference that people are choosing, which is impacting the rest of the world. It's like, no, I really want to have my bacon. You don't have to eat it, but I really want to have my bacon. Well, it's like, if everyone thinks like that, then we're in the situation that we're in now, basically. Yeah. I love what you brought up about the dairy and the soy milk. Do you mind kind of elaborating on that for people that potentially don't know about phytoestrogen and all of that? Because a lot of people are scared to consume soy for that reason.
Yeah, that is crazy. I get a lot of messages also on Instagram. People say I have breast tumors, or my doctor said avoid soy. I was like, really? Like, amongst everything your doctor could tell you, they were just like, don't eat soy, which is crazy because it's actually It has a plant version or homologue of estrogen, but it's for plants, not for mammals. And it actually there are two receptors for at least two receptors for estrogen, and the mammalian estrogen works on one, but the phytoestrogen works on both, and it can actually reverse or have an opposite effect of estrogen depending on what receptor it's interacting with, and it can actually reduce the risk of cancer. And in normal amounts, it will by no means increase the risk of cancer. It can actually prevent or reduce the risk of certain cancers. But it's ironic when people are worried about that because they consume dairy, which has the mammalian version of estrogen. That's like a lot more closer to what our own estrogen is like, right? And then we know that we all make cancer cells in our body. Our body is very well tuned to find these genetic mutations and kill those cells. And it's always like a fight. And that's why if we lived long enough, we all die from cancer eventually. But it's a matter of like at what point there is more cancer cells than our body can handle and find and kill, that cancer starts manifesting itself. But so the more you feed it the fuel, and the fuel could be what? It could be the growth factors or what. Another thing in milk is IGF, the growth factors. There are hormones in it. And at the same time, many animal products like meat, again, they naturally have It doesn't matter if it's grass-fed, organic. It doesn't matter. It's in meat, and when you cook it, like I mentioned, even worse now. So you keep fueling this. At the same time, every time you have meat and eggs and dairy, it just means that you're having less plants, vegetables, fruits, and other things that actually have anti-cancer properties, and legumes, right? So you're reducing this, increasing the fuel for cancer. Your immune system is inflamed, and you just increase the risk of cancer. Obviously, that doesn't mean that vegans don't get cancer. It's all about statistics and reducing the risk. But yeah, and then the other crazy thing about milk is most people in the world are lactose intolerant. The only people who are not are Caucasians who lived in Northern Europe, and they relied on dairy many years ago because it was cold and that was the only thing they could eat. That they developed a genetic mutation. So when people tell me that I'm lactose intolerant, I'm like, no, you're normal. People who actually digest lactose are mutant in a way. So, I'm careful not to get into like appeal to nature fallacy, that something because it's natural or not, it's good or bad. But really, we all, as babies, we all digest lactose. Because we need it. Our body is designed to digest lactose. As babies, we need human milk as babies. But as we grow up, that gene just turns off because we are not in need of dairy anymore. We don't need milk. And the fact that significant majority of people, including Asians and Chinese and Hispanic and Black people, we are lactose intolerant, whether we know it or not. A lot of times people actually consume dairy and they don't know. Like if they don't, like, we are in this a lot and we talk about nutrition, but you have to think about poor communities, some of the Black communities, Hispanic communities where people don't get education on diet. They just have to live paycheck by paycheck. They don't have access to good food. They don't know about like lactose. Nobody ever told them about this. And imagine in schools, our students are forced, literally they're forced to consume dairy. They're forced to have milk in many schools, public schools, that is. If they don't want to have milk, they have to like bring a letter from a physician. Most people don't want to do it. They don't even know it, right? So these people, especially if they are like people of color, now they have to have lactose. They probably feel sick and they think this is how things are. This is the normal state of. They don't even know that it's caused by milk. It's a whole like food injustice thing. Obviously, there is a big lobby and all that. So when you look at it, it's crazy how much damage is dairy doing, and cancer is one of them. Estrogens in milk. Saturated fat especially, but yeah, it's way beyond that. It's basically liquid death.
Yeah, and I know Doudsy from Switch for Good.
Yeah.
I know they're doing incredible work with that. But I did not know that you needed a letter to not consume dairy. Like I'm sure in some schools, that's crazy. We didn't have that growing up. Which you brought up the IGF-1 and some of the hormones that are in meat and dairy. I was just talking about this with my wife. I was like, kids nowadays look like grown men and grown women, and they're like 12, 13 years old. I'm like, when I was in high school, we looked like kids. We looked like we were 12 or 13. But now they look older and older and older at a younger age. And there has to be a correlation with, them eating meat and dairy and all those things, because it is wild, the difference from my high school picture to even my little brother's high school picture. It's a complete difference. Yeah. So you brought up it when you were sharing about cancer, right? So cancer cells are growing and then, over time, potentially overtake the body. So what are things that, because cancer is really close to my heart. So what are things that people can do to ensure that the cancer cells don't take over earlier on in their life?
Exercise, diet. Obviously, there are other things you can avoid that are extremely, like many cancers obviously are caused by smoking and then sunlight for skin cancer. But the mortality rate from skin cancer is at least not high, but it is definitely like avoid smoking and drinking, please. Like I'm vegan and alcohol could be vegan, but I still think that You know, I used to be a social drinker. I was never like a heavy drinker or anything. But when I learned that there is no safe level of alcohol consumption. Any amounts that you take, as you increase your risk.
Yeah.
And that was a I guess, misunderstanding for myself as well. So when I learned that, I was like, why do I want to do that, right?
Yeah.
Why do I want to numb my brain? What am I even like escaping from? It's crazy. And the pressure that people have to consume drink, don't even get me started on that. But yeah, quit drinking and smoking, obviously. Plant-based diet, eating fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds and legumes, and exercising. So, but I would say probably the most impact we're going to see from exercise and diet.
I love that you said the pressure of drinking, because I maybe drank like 3 times in my life. I just hated it every time. I was like, I'm gonna give it a fair shot, and I was like, nah, it was gross. It doesn't
Yep.
taste good. It gives me a headache. Not worth it. What would be interesting to me is if vegans were allowed, if vegans would push the way that people push you to drink alcohol, people will have a very different reaction. Like the way people will push you to socially drink and all that. If people responded the same way as when vegans push, drinking alcohol would be taboo at that point.
Yeah,
It would be unacceptable to push that much.
absolutely. It's crazy how you have to explain yourself why you are not drinking and how normalized these harmful things are. And that's a good sign for anyone who's listening to this, that society is often wrong. You see that with, smoking, now vaping, and then alcohol and, animal consumption. And every time you make a good decision, let's say, as clearly as not drinking, you're going to get pushback from society. Like if you decide not to drink this thing that is going to give you cancer, there's pushback in society. So you really have to, have a thick skin and just do what's right, for sure.
Yeah. No, honestly, it is weird because, we kind of all grew up and have been in those circles
Yeah.
eventually. And eventually we figured out we have to get out of those circles. But if you're like, hey, I'm going to leave the party early because I want to go to bed and I want to feel good tomorrow. No, come on, stay until 2 a.m. I was like, I want to feel good tomorrow. I want to feel rested. I don't want to drink because it gives me a headache and it tastes like crap. Oh, come on, just have one drink with us or eat this burger or this bacon or whatever. So anything that's good for you anything that you get pushed back on, it means you're probably doing the right thing. Because
Yep.
the majority of the world wouldn't agree with you on it.
And I also challenge these ideas. Like, think about any time that you were drinking and having a conversation with someone, and ask yourself, did anything meaningful ever come from those sort of conversations and crowds? And I don't say like don't laugh, don't have fun, but really, oftentimes we train ourselves not to think of many other things as fun. Like I love to grab coffee and talk about like strategies. How can we like bring more plant-based physicians to schools and talk about veganism? What made you go vegan? And over a cup of coffee, find those common grounds. I love, even when it's hard sometimes, I love dedicating my life to my work. It's not even work. It's just so enjoyable. It's such a duty and pleasure to work in this field. And then the society has defined that no, fun is you have this miserable job that you don't care about just because it pays you. And then you're so miserable that on Friday night, you just have to go out with your friends or colleague and gossip and have conversations that don't mean anything. And just complain about things and pretend to be happy. Because let's be honest, if you're happy after drinking, it's pretense. Because if you were truly happy, you wouldn't need alcohol to numb your brain to feel happy. So if you need alcohol to feel happy, as a friend, I'm here to just tell you that the problem is probably somewhere else.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. There was a time where I kind of had that job way back in the day that I didn't enjoy. And I didn't drink at the time. I had stopped at that point because it was only a few times. but I just realized like I need to build a better life for
Yep.
myself. And that's when I obviously made an effort to meet, my wife and build my business and kind of change things. It wasn't immediate. It took, over 5 years, but it was absolutely worth it, where you don't ever have the thought of like, let me go drink or smoke or do something to try to remove the cloud that's over my head so that I can allow myself to feel good.
Yeah. We all had those jobs at some point, and I think one of my messages to anyone listening to this is like, if your job is making you miserable, this is your cue to quit that job. Plan your exit, do something that is meaningful for you. And I don't know a single person who decided that, you know what, this really sucks, I'm going to do something better for myself, for the world, and they regretted it. I don't know a single person. It always, at first, it's just we are afraid. There's a lot of fear and insecurities, but it's just in our head. And when you actually do it, doors open, and you'll end up feeling a lot better about yourself.
Yeah. No, I love what you said, plan your exit as well. You don't have to like quit your job today and then you have bills to pay and kids to feed. Yeah. Be strategic about it. Make sure you have some security aside and all that. But best decision I've ever made. And I made it when it was a really stupid move at the time. I want to go back to you shared for the nonprofit work that you do. So you mentioned was the term food scientist, where you're kind of developing more sustainable sources of protein?
Yeah, so yeah, food scientist, food system scientist, depends on like what someone's job is. For me, it's a
Yeah.
food system, so I don't make stuff in a lab that people eat. I look at the science of the impact of food system on global health, on environment, as well as um, how to make these alternative proteins cheaper, how to scale it up, how to make them more nutritious, healthier, all that.
And what are some of the if you're allowed to, what are some of the ones that you're currently working on that people can potentially already go and grab now or potentially expect in the future?
To like consume, you mean?
Yeah. Because obviously, if you guys are working on something that eventually could be delivered to like the masses, that would be the idea at the end of it. People are like, hey, if we can get everyone to like eat this way or consume these things, it would be a lot better for the environment.
Yeah, so my job is specifically in the other nonprofit Good Food Institute is focused on cultivated meat, which for people who don't know is like stem cells that you put in culture, and you basically grow meat that is for in any way that matters. It's similar to dead animal flesh. Um, the idea is, I know that a lot of vegans don't like it, but it's really not for vegans. It's just meant for people who would never stop eating dead animals. Now they can have slaughter-free meat, and it still has some health benefits. It doesn't cause antibiotic resistance. It takes less hormones. Um, it's a lot better for the environment. It doesn't cause zoonotic diseases. So at the very least, it becomes really a personal choice if somebody eats that meat. I don't think it's healthier than eating plant-based meat, but I think right now, if you have meat, eggs, dairy, not only you're harming yourself, you're harming an animal, you're harming the environment, and you're harming everyone else.
Yeah.
But with this, at least you're just harming yourself, and that is a true personal choice to a degree. But I do hope that people will still make the best choice. But I think that at least provides a transition for a lot of people who, they just can't give up red meat. Now they can have, steak that's used, cultivated meat process. But yeah, so I'm not working on any specific product. My job is like, how do we make it become more feasible? Because right now it's expensive. That's really just the big challenge. How do you make it cheaper, and sort of trying to figure out that stuff.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So I guess I've heard of it. The meat that's will be grown in a lab,
Yeah.
basically. But because you don't need antibiotics and hormones to raise it, you're kind of removing that from the equation, because you don't need to have it in a field that's land that won't be used for that purpose. You won't need agriculture to feed it. So there's going to have a massive impact from an environmental standpoint, a supply chain standpoint, because nothing needs to be moved around. Um, I think if a lot of people that aren't ready to go vegan, that want to transition to that, it'll have a massive positive impact. My wife and I talk about it sometimes. I was like, well, it's like it's wasn't slaughtered, so it's vegan in that way, but it's not vegan because it's animal meat. I was like, I probably wouldn't eat it, but I'd probably get my dad to like eat it because he's not fully vegan. So I'd be like, hey, at least have this because it won't be like as bad as you go to Costco and buying like half a cow. Like at least this would be a much better alternative.
For sure.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I can't remember his last name. Paul, Better Meat Co.
Yeah.
This mycoprotein. Yeah, he invited us to go up to see him and his wife Tony, but we haven't gone up yet. But he's doing some cool stuff with the mycoprotein as well. Does that fall kind of under the category of more of those sustainable sources?
Yeah, alternative proteins in general. We call plant-based fermentation, so that's either plant-based or fermentation, and cultivated meat, which we say cultivated meat or clean meat, whatever you call it. Generally not lab-grown because it's a term that the industry, the meat industry, likes to use to sort of say it's ultra processed in a lab, versus hot dog was developed in a lab at some point, and cultivated meat is not going to be developed in a lab. It's going to be produced in factories like any other food. So I like to say, and lab grown it doesn't sound appetizing, and that's why meat industry uses it. So
yeah, so they're trying to deter people away from it.
Yeah.
Which they should try to own at the same time, because it's kind of like their market, just without all the overhead of the agriculture and the land and the farmers, basically.
Yeah. Actually, some meat companies are investing in cultivated meat. Sometimes it's the Cattlemen Association or something that they're like misinformed, or they think this is gonna. But that's how afraid they are. Cultivated meat is barely being sold in even like 1 or 2 places in the US for very limited number of people. And that has already like scared the meat industry, which is funny in a way.
Yeah. No, for sure. I can see like
and all that.
The smaller people at the bottom that are making their living from doing. I can understand. Basically, they're going to lose their business technically unless they make a big pivot. There's been farmers that have moved to like growing hemp or corn or soy, or I can remember the documentary. They're growing mushrooms in their old farm. So there's always ways to pivot. I think slowly the world is shifting to eating more plant-based. We had a big spike during COVID, but it kind of went down now. But I think a lot of things are happening under that most people are not seeing, where we're going to have another big curve up of more people having an interest. And it's actually going to be a more sustainable curve than we had during COVID. Yeah. So I would like to ask you, a last question to kind of set the listeners in the right direction. So what are things that you already shared a lot of great information today, but what are things that you would like people to take action on? Because I know before we started recording, we talked about, let's eat whole food, plant-based. Let's look at all of these things. But how can we use our own skills or talents to be able to move the movement forward?
Yeah, so it always starts by ourselves. So even if you're already vegan, I really encourage you to try to be a healthy vegan. Obviously, we all know you can be vegan and eat Beyond Burgers every single day, but try just to limit that stuff. Eat more healthy, try to be a fit vegan, because that always helps. It sucks that we need to, because we are living in a society that if you cough, where people are like, oh, that's because you're vegan. So let's not give people extra excuse and be the best version of ourselves. The other thing that I say is, if you're not vegan, consider going vegan, and doing so as quickly as possible. And the only thing I share with you, it took me 3 months to go vegan since I learned about the idea. And that's just because my friend didn't really show me any footage, didn't talk to me. It was just all in my head. And I had questions, nobody answered. And it just took me some time. But I really wish that I had a friend who said, Faraz, sit down, watch this. I'll help you. You got this. Right? So you can be that person for someone else. And it took me some time. The best question that I lay in front of you is put yourself in place of these animals. And if you're watching this, you probably love animals in your life, right? The cats, dogs, whatever. The pigs and chickens and cows that we're killing for meat, eggs, dairy, leather, fur, all that, they deserve the same life, right? But then you look into the amount of exploitation and abuse. And it's like, just put yourself in their place. Imagine if your dog was in trouble. How urgently would you want that to stop? And if the answer is immediately, if someone was abusing you, you want that to stop immediately. Hello, golden rule, right? So please stop that immediately when it comes to other animals. And the second perspective I share with you is, if you ever think going vegan is hard, which sometimes it is, understand that doing the right thing, as we discussed earlier, is oftentimes harder. If you really want to build muscles, you have to work towards it, right? If you obviously littering is a lot easier than not littering, but you know it's the right thing to do to not litter. You hold on to your garbage, walk 50 feet to find a trash can. If you do that for trash, why not doing it for somebody's life? Because every time you have a drop of milk, guaranteed a male cow had to be killed. And the female, the second they're not profitable, they're also killed. So think about this. Like, is it really harder to find a vegan option, or is it harder for those animals? And that perspective really changed my approach to veganism. And it really goes from being some diets that I don't eat meat or don't eat that, to becoming like a huge ethical issue, like the blind spot in morality of the society. It almost feels like you're against slavery and you're living 200 years ago. And you're like, this is wrong. And everyone's like, oh, no, we've been doing it for thousands of years. It's good for economy, or whatever excuse they had. And that's why it's wisely being said that, 50 years from now, we'll look back to what we were doing to animals the same way we look back to slavery and, women couldn't vote and LGBT right, whatever in the past. And today you have that choice. Like, what side of history do you want to be? And so even if you're vegan, you're still not off the hook. And I'm here to also push you to get out of your comfort zone, because veganism is not just about, again, I want to make this analogy. Anything else that is systemically wrong, let's say like racism or slavery. If I went 200 years ago, do I just want to say, hey, yeah, I know slavery is wrong, but you do you? Or do I want to say, no, this is fucked up, and I'm going to do whatever there is in my power, whatever I have, whatever power I have to make a change, to free these people, to do the right thing. And I know that that's going to be uncomfortable. I know that my family and friends and everyone is going to tell me, everyone is going to push back. But I'd rather die knowing that I do the right thing than just go with the society and be a part of, be complicit in this system of oppression and suffering, right? So that's the opportunity we have today. What side of history do you want to be? And even if you're vegan, it's literally the bare minimum that we can do. Being vegan just means that you don't pay for this. But really the true manifestation of understanding the depth of suffering that we're causing would be that you push yourself to do something, to become active. And when I say active, it can be literally anything that you're comfortable with, or maybe even not comfortable with, but you have to do. That could be talking to your friends and family, sharing a documentary with them. I know so many people who, it's so hard to have conversations with friends and family. So what they did was like, for my birthday, I don't want gifts. Just watch this movie, Dominion, with me. Just watch Game Changers with me for my birthday. I mean, who says no? Instead of gift, come watch this thing with me. For my birthday, can we just go to a vegan restaurant? And if your friends are not coming to a vegan restaurant for your birthday, do you need those friends in your life anyways? So that's another story. But use every single opportunity in your life. That could be one. I would say, think about your careers. If your career is not making the impact that you want, know that you don't have to do it for the rest of your life. We're going to die very soon in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, depending on how old you are. Life is just too short to do random bullshit that makes you miserable. So quit those jobs, do something that is meaningful. It's never late. It could be working towards something that we are working, right? Just like serving other people and animals. And sometimes it makes sense for you to keep that job if it makes a lot of money, and then donate that money to an organization or person who's doing the job. That's one way to go about it. There are things as simple as writing reviews. If 20 people, 20 vegans went to a restaurant that doesn't have vegan options or good vegan options and wrote a bad review, and 20 vegan would be enough to drastically influence that business. Except that most of us, unfortunately, in society, and it's not just vegans, most of us just complain. We don't get out there to actually do it. We love to bitch about things, but we don't want to actually do the thing. So do the thing. It's like you'll be surprised how many thousands of views after just a month or two of writing reviews your reviews will get. I have like 14 million by now, and I do bare minimum. Like maybe once every month I write a review, and I need to do better. But 14 million people have seen pictures of tasty foods when I thanked a business for having good vegan options, or said, hey, I'm not coming here again until you change your menus. If 100 people gave 2 star or 1 star to a business, you thank their review. And that's a power we all have. We just have to do things. So it doesn't matter whether it's your career, whether it's writing reviews, being a good example and healthy example of a vegan, speaking to friends and family, using your social media. Most of us have 400, 500 something followers. Sometimes something as simple as sharing your story, why you care about this, why you went vegan, and people resonate with that. It's the sweetest and most loving and compassionate thing that you can say. Hey, I always loved animals. This is something I never considered, and that's really changed my life. And that's why I recommend to my friends and family to watch this. Anything really in our power. So get creative, and the only thing I say is, in the face of injustice, silence is not an option. So we just have to get uncomfortable and do what needs to be done.
Yeah, when you were sharing that about helping people understand better, I'm sure you've been to an animal sanctuary before.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
Yeah, going there, there was one, it was somewhere in Quebec in Canada, I believe. But there was this, I grew up on a farm, so we literally like killed chickens, we had geeses and everything. We were farmers. But to have a cow that had like big, beautiful eyes, and she was playing around with the ball and like jumping like a dog and playing. So I think for people to be able to see that and just see like the beauty in animals, and to be like, oh my God, I could never, if you give me a knife, I could never do this. Most people, even if the cow is not cute, you give them a knife, they won't be able to do it. But, to add to that element of like an animal that is in a safe space that interacts differently with humans, I think that can make a big perspective change for a lot of people. And you just go there, you donate a bit of money, you support the farm, and then you can kind of go and have that experience. For the reviews, I've done some reviews before, but usually I'll be like, hey, like I appreciate you guys like having good vegan option, and then I'll give a suggestion of like, hey, if you made like a Buddha bowl, because I saw in all the other plates you already had all these options. It's just about like putting them together. Because when there's a few restaurants that were vegan and then kind of added meat back into their menu and things like that. And at the end of the day, it's business. I get it. I'd rather have a restaurant with good vegan options than a vegan restaurant that closes down because they can't do business anymore. So I'd rather have that option available. But yeah, I think like guiding and educating some of the restaurant, depending on where you're going to, if you're going to like what is it called here? I can't remember the steakhouse is. I'll be honest with you. I've been to some business meeting at a steakhouse and had fantastic vegan food. They had fantastic vegan menu because everyone else was like, there was like 15 people. I was the only vegan there. So I just went because I was like, you guys do you. But I was able to order a delicious vegan option, and people were like, that looks good. Let me get one of these things too. So yeah, many different ways to inspire people. But like you said, I'm trying to get people to become fit vegans because, fortunately or unfortunately, you are a walking billboard for the movement. right? As soon as they say you're vegan, they look at you. They look at how you act. They look at how you respond to things. So as soon as you say it, you are a walking billboard and you're a representation of the movement. And I know some people that are more junk food vegan that don't say that they're vegan because they don't feel that they're a good representation of it. And that's why I'm trying to help people get healthy and fit, because then they can like say it proudly and be like, yeah, this is what it looks like. But yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate you sharing all those things. I think a lot of it's going to resonate with people, and they'll be able to figure out their path as to kind of how to be able to spread the movement in their community. Yeah, man, honestly, I just want to say a big thank you. This was very insightful and valuable, and I know people are going to get a lot of inspiration and knowledge from it. So how can people support the work that you're doing? And I'll be sure to link all those things in the description.
Thank you. Yeah. First of all, if I can help anyone, if they have questions, they want to brainstorm things, you can find me on social media. I think messaging me on Instagram is probably a good way. It's just at Dr. Faraz Harsini, just my name. All of my social medias are the same. Also YouTube. You can email me through our website, which is alliedscholars.org. There's a contact form. If they fill it out, it'll come to me. So if I can help with anything, please feel free to reach out. There is nothing more that I want, that just to help people to make better decisions for themselves and animals. And if you want to help me, this is a cause I'm dedicating the rest of my life to, and this is a hill I'm going to die on. And if you want to support me, you can again go to alliedscholars.org and just click on donate. You don't have to be rich to donate. Sometimes when like buying a cup of coffee per week, but just donating that to ASAP, which is a non-profit 501c3, that allows us to expand to more universities. We are in 25 universities, but the goal is to be in at least top 100 and then go from there. But yeah, I also say I convince a few people to stop drinking altogether and donate. I mean, I didn't say donate to ASAP, but they ended up donating to ASAP. But it was really good because I also know that they didn't make a lot of money. They work in nonprofits, and I know that they don't make more than like 40, 50,000, 45 probably. And I was surprised that they donated $50 per month to ASAP. And I almost felt bad. I was like, I didn't expect that. And, he said, yeah, I stopped drinking after something I said. And instead of wasting that money on alcohol, I'm donating it to a good cause. So you don't have to be rich you don't need anything. You just need the clarity of mind and goodwill to make an impact. So yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, for everyone listening, I'll be linking everything in the description below, so you can go and check out the links. Dr. Faraz, I appreciate you for jumping on, man. I'm sure we're going to cross path at another conference in the next few months. And everyone, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Awesome. Thanks.